Imani saw him before her foot hit the dock. And she saw her. A woman. Korean. Beautiful in a quiet, devastating way. Standing close to Kwandae's son with the ease of a person who had been standing close to him for years. Pale blue coat. Dark hair. And in her arms, wrapped in cream fabric, eyes blinking slowly at the December harbor light. A baby. Imani's legs stopped working. Not literally. She kept moving because her body had 14 years of training that operated below the level of conscious decision. But something in her chest, the place where she had been storing 7 years of "I will be right here," collapsed completely. Like a load-bearing wall hit with something it was never designed to survive. 7 years. She had been gone 7 years. This baby was 8 months old. She did the arithmetic in the time it took to breathe. Dai's son saw her. She watched his face crack open, watched the guilt flood in before he could stop it. Not regular guilt, not the guilt of someone caught in a small thing. The guilt of a man who had constructed an entirely different life over the rubble of the one he'd promised her, and had just looked up to find the original architect standing 10 feet away in dress whites. He mouthed her name. Imani walked. She did not run. She did not scream. She did not give that crowd, those families with their handmade signs and their brass band and their clean, intact joy, the sight of a decorated naval officer coming apart at the seams in public. She was a lieutenant commander. She walked with her back straight and her chin level and her medals catching the light, and she did not stop moving until she was through the terminal and into the parking lot and sitting on a concrete barrier at the far edge where nobody could see her face. Her hands were on her knees. She looked at them. They were not shaking. She thought, good. And then, because she was alone, and there was no mission requiring her to be operational right now, she pressed one fist hard against her sternum, and she let it hit her. All of it. 7 years of letters she had written him. 7 years of his photograph in her breast pocket before missions. The way he had held her hands at the gate at 4 a.m. and said the only sentence she had needed on every bad night since. "Come back to me, Imani. I will be right here." She sat with it for exactly the amount of time it took to fully feel it. Then she locked it, breathed, straightened her back, and started thinking about what came next. If you are new here, subscribe right now. Do not wait. Because what she just saw, that is not even the worst of it. The worst of it is what she's about to find out. Stay with me. She turned her phone on. 42 missed calls. 38 from Day Sun. The last cluster starting at 4:57 a.m. before sunrise, before the docking time was publicly posted, which meant he had known her schedule, classified naval schedule. 2 calls from Destiny, her sister in Baltimore, both marked urgent, both from 2 days ago, and 1 call from an unknown soul number, 4 weeks ago. No voicemail. She set the phone face down on her knee. She thought about the arithmetic again because the arithmetic was worse than the emotion, and she needed to look at it directly. 8 months old, conception at 17 months ago, 5.5 years into her deployment. He had not waited for grief to run its course, had not waited for the distance to become unbearable, had moved on while she was still putting his photograph in her pocket before operations. The superstition of soldiers, the specific ritual of people who are coming back to something and need to hold the proof of it against their chest while they go. He had been at that dock this morning. He had known she was coming. He had shown up with his new wife and his baby and stood there. A black car entered the parking lot. It moved with deliberate, careful slowness, not hesitation, but the specific pacing of someone who understood that aggression right now would be a mistake. Parked 6 spaces to her left. Engine off. Silence. Then the door opened. Korean, tall, with a build that was functional and real, not decorative, not maintained for appearance. Dark overcoat, collar up against the cold. As he came around the front of the car, she saw the ink on his hands, black geometric patterns across both, disappearing into his cuffs, and above his collar on the left, the edge of something more complex, tracing the line of his neck. His face was the most controlled face she had seen in a long time, and she had spent 7 years looking at controlled faces in high-pressure rooms. This was different. This was not professionalism. This was something constructed over years, for real reasons, by someone who had needed it. He was carrying 2 paper cups of tea. He stopped at an exact distance from her, not crowding, not so far that speaking required projecting. The precise distance for a conversation she had not yet agreed to have. He had calculated it. "You held yourself together in front of all those people," he said. His English was seamless and unhurried. "That takes something most people don't have." She looked at him, the way she looked at anything unclassified. "I don't know you." "No," he said, "you don't. Then leave." He looked at her for one moment, then he crossed to the barrier, set one of the cups down to her left, far enough that reaching for it was entirely her decision, and walked back to his car. Got in, closed the door. He did not leave. She looked at the cup, steam rising in the cold air. She looked at the fence. She looked at the phone on her knee. She looked at the cup again. She didn't drink it, but she didn't throw it either. Dae-sun called again. She watched the screen light up with his name and go dark. Then 3 more times. She watched every single one die. She sat on the concrete barrier while Port Caro's reunion noise continued on the other side of the terminal wall, and she held the weight of the worst morning of her adult life. And she did not collapse under it, and she did not pretend it wasn't happening, and she did not stop thinking about what she was going to do next. Because there was always a next. 14 years of training had made sure of that. It did not let you stop at the feeling. It kept reaching, past the feeling, toward the action. She picked up the tea. It was still warm. She drank it slowly, and she began to plan. She spent the rest of that day in her temporary housing, a room near the base, clean and spare and smelling of bleach and institutional linen. 1 window, 1 desk, 1 lamp. She had lived in far worse. She sat at that desk and she wrote, not a report, her own handwriting in the notebook she had carried through 14 volumes of deployment. And she wrote what she knew for certain first. She was legally married to Kwon Dae-sun. Federal law protected the marital status of deployed service members. Divorce proceedings required documented notification to the deployed party. She had received none, not once, in 7 years. An 8-month-old child meant conception at 17 months prior during active deployment. Dae-sun had started calling at 4:57 a.m. before the docking time was public, which meant classified schedule access. At the bottom of the page, in small, controlled handwriting, I do not yet know the full picture. No assumptions, intel first, everything else after. At 7 p.m., a text arrived from the Seoul number, an address in Port Caro's Korean district, and below it, Sora and Cece, 8 p.m., I owe you an explanation. ST. She sat with it for 43 minutes. She thought about the black car and the calculated distance, and the tea placed where it was her choice to reach for it. She thought about 38 unanswered calls from a man who had built another life in her absence. She thought about what she had versus what she needed, and what she needed most right now was information. She put on her good clothes, fitted black trousers, a rust-colored blouse, her camel coat, her gold hoops. She went. Sora and Cece was on a corner that had stopped choosing between Seoul and Accra. Dark wood exterior, menus in the window in Korean and English and Twai, and a smell from the door that hit her before she pushed it open. Jollof rice and doenjang jjigae simultaneously, which had no business working together and somehow created something better than either alone. The man from the parking lot was already there. He stood when she walked in. Not performance, just reflex. Table near the back, sightlines to both exits, chosen deliberately. She noted it and filed it. A woman came from the kitchen before Imani had taken 3 full steps. short, somewhere between 50 and 70, kente print blouse under a chef's apron. The specific authority of a woman who had been feeding people through difficult things for so long, it had become a kind of calling. She looked at Imani, then at the man, then back. "You brought someone," she said. Statement. "Mama Sue," he said. "Whatever she wants." Mama Sue looked at Imani with dark, quick, fully assessing eyes. Then, "Sit down, baby. You look like you haven't had a real meal in 3 days." Gone before there was space to answer. They sat across from each other. He had removed his coat. The tattoos were more extensive than the parking lot had shown. Both arms, the left side of his neck in dense linework, geometric patterns that resolved up close into something between traditional Korean design and something older with different origins entirely. His face in the warm restaurant light was still composed, but she could see through the composure now, the way you could see through certain kinds of glass. The fatigue behind it, not physical, accumulated, the kind that came from managing very large and very difficult things for a very long time with nobody to share the weight with. "Who are you?" she said. "Shin Jaywan," he said. "I own businesses in Port Caro and Seoul. Some of them are legitimate." She let the last sentence sit. "How do you know Kwon Dae-soon?" "He has managed financial accounts for my organization for 6 years, Jaywan said. "He was recruited 3 months after your deployment began. Identified as someone with the financial skill and the personal circumstances to be discreet." "Personal circumstances meaning?" "Debts he hadn't told you about," Jaywan said. "And then later, a life he was building that required your absence to become permanent." Mama Sue reappeared with 2 bowls that smelled like they had been made with genuine expertise and care, set them down with the expectation that they would be used, and left. Neither of them touched the food yet. "The accounts," Imani said. "2 of them carry your full legal name," he said. "Social security number, military ID, active for 4 years, holding approximately $4 million that did not come from your salary. Dae-sun registered them under your name because a deployed Black American naval officer's identity attached to a financial account reads as clean, legitimate civilian assets. It created a credibility layer that protected the money from standard scrutiny." She held her expression perfectly neutral. "You're telling me I'm legally attached to $4 million of laundered money I knew nothing about?" "Legally, yes," he said. "Practically, your defense is airtight. 7 years of deployment records, physical impossibility of participation. But if those accounts surface before you take legal action, the narrative becomes very complicated very fast, regardless of the truth." He held her gaze. "I am not going to allow that to happen." "Why?" she said. "Because Dae-sun produced forged divorce papers dated 3 months into your deployment," he said, "and he said it the way you said things that needed to arrive cleanly and completely. He presented himself to my organization as a divorced man. We ran checks and they passed. The forgery only failed when his personal financial behavior created irregularities that made us look deeper." The restaurant was warm and still around them. Someone in the kitchen was singing, low and Korean, something that had the rhythm of something very old. Imani did not move. "He forged divorce papers 3 months after you shipped out," Jaywan said. "He then began a relationship with Yoon Jina. She has no knowledge of your existence. She believes she is his only wife. She is not complicit." "No," Imani said quietly. "She's not the problem." "There is more," Jaywan said. His voice stayed level the way voices stayed level when the next sentence was the kind that changed the shape of everything. "Dae-sun has been in contact with a federal investigator for approximately 8 months. We have surveillance photographs. At minimum 5 meetings. We don't yet know the full terms of whatever arrangement they've built." She ran the arithmetic immediately. 8 months ago. Gina, 4 months postpartum. Dae-sun at that point. The domestic architecture complete. The first structural vibrations of unsustainability beginning. A man who thought 3 moves ahead, starting to engineer his exit before the floor gave way under him. She had admired that quality in him once. his strategic mind, his long view. She had not understood whose interests his long view had always been protecting. "He's cooperating with federal investigators," she said, "trading your organization for immunity." "Building leverage for immunity," Jaywan said. "We believe both simultaneously." "Which means, if your legal team doesn't separate my name from those accounts before his deal closes, your name surfaces in federal discovery," he said, "and you become a person of interest in a criminal investigation you had no participation in." "Yes." She picked up her spoon. Ate. Not because she was hungry. Appetite was something she would reconstruct later, in some future week that felt less like standing inside a building that was on fire. She ate because training had an override that was older than grief. Give the body a task and the mind would find its anchor. The food was extraordinary. Short rib braised in something that tasted simultaneously like palm wine and ganjang over rice, with a garnish she couldn't name but was going to ask about before she left this building. She ate and she thought and she let the operational shape of the situation become fully clear. Not just the betrayal of it, not just the grief, the threat vectors, the timeline, the leverage she had and the leverage she didn't. "He forged divorce papers," she said, "while I was protecting this country." She said it quiet and precise and without performance, into the warm air, because some facts needed to exist in the open before you could move through them. Jaywan said nothing. There was nothing to say. Some things only needed a witness. She set the spoon down, looked at him directly. "I want every document you have, tomorrow morning." "Already prepared," he said, "and I want to know what you get out of this that you haven't told me yet." He held her gaze without flinching. "If the accounts are legally clean, and the name on them belongs to a decorated service member with a spotless record who was deployed for the entire relevant period, Day-sun's usefulness as a federal informant evaporates. His credibility is destroyed. The case he's building against my organization loses its primary witness." "So, I'm an operational asset," she said, "not just a protected civilian." "Yes," he said. "I told you some of my businesses are legitimate. Honesty with you is one of them." She looked at him for a long moment across the small table in the warm restaurant while Mama Sue moved somewhere in the kitchen and the old Korean song drifted through the pass-through. "He used my name on those accounts," she said, knowing I was overseas, knowing I couldn't see it, knowing that if it ever surfaced, I would have no ability to respond in real time. "Yes," Jaywan said. "He forged my signature while I was writing him letters." "Yes," and stood on that dock this morning and watched me walk off the ship. Jaywan was quiet. There was nothing adequate to say to that, and he was wise enough not to reach for something inadequate. Mama Sue appeared quietly, refilled their tea, looked at both their bowls with measured approval, and was gone again. The economy of a woman who understood precisely when a room needed feeding and when it needed space. "Mama Sue," Imani said toward the kitchen. She appeared in the doorway. "The braising liquid on the short rib," Imani said, "is that palm wine?" Mama Sue's face broke into pure satisfaction. "Palm wine and soy and one thing I tell nobody in this world. You have a good nose, baby." "My mother cooked," Imani said. "She used palm wine in everything she made." Mama Sue looked at her for one full moment. Not pity, but the thing that lived next door to it. The look of a woman recognizing grief in another woman's voice and choosing to honor it by not naming it directly. "I will send you home with a bottle," she said, and was gone. When Imani stood to leave, she stopped at the door and looked back across the room at him. "You're not someone I handle," Jaywan said before she formed the question. "You're someone I tell the truth to." She looked at him. Let it land. Then she left. "Comment right now, because I need to know if there is anyone in this comment section defending Day-sun. Because some of you are going to try it. Write it below and explain every word of it. Like this video if you're already fully on Imani's side. She has not even started yet." The conference room on the 14th floor was minimal and clean. Long table, one manila folder at the center, One chair. Jaywan's assistant left her alone with it at 9:01. She opened the folder and started working. The forged divorce papers were on top, dated 11 weeks after her deployment began. She examined her own signature first. 14 years of putting her name on orders, and field reports had made her signature as specific and identifiable as a fingerprint. Everything was right, except one detail: the capital A in Asante. She always wrote it with the crossbar fractionally elevated, a habit absorbed from her mother's handwriting at age 7, so deep in her muscle memory she had never consciously tried to change it. The forged version had a centered crossbar. In any other context, she would have missed it. In this context, she found it in under 3 seconds. 11 weeks. He had forged her out of the marriage in 11 weeks. Had done the administrative work of erasing their legal union while she was still crossing open water toward her first deployment, and then he had folded the paper away and gone on with becoming a completely different man. Below the divorce papers, 4 years of account statements. Her name at the top of every page, her information in every header. She read them the way she had been trained to read intelligence, not for narrative, but for structure. Deposits layered at irregular intervals, designed to stay below the thresholds that triggered automatic reporting. Disbursements to 3 shell companies whose names she wrote in her notebook. 4 years, slightly over $4 million. Moving with a precision that told her something uncomfortable. Dai's son had been genuinely good at this. He had been careful, and he had been skilled, and she had not known that version of him existed. Below the statements, Gina's marriage certificate. Below that, 8 surveillance photographs. She went through them with the methodical patience of someone who had done document analysis in field conditions. Dai's son at a restaurant, photographed from above and to the left, the angle requiring upper floor access in the building directly across the street. She knew that street. She had walked it last night on the way to Sora and Sisi. Dai's son at a private pier, photographed at water level with the slight focal rocking of a camera on a boat. Dai's son in a back room, sitting across from a man in a nondescript suit who had the posture and the specific careful blankness of someone trained to look civilian. She had been in enough interagency briefings to make that identification without needing to see credentials. Jaywan came in. She turned the photograph without saying anything. FBI, he said. Field agent. 3rd meeting. They changed venues after this. 8 months ago, she said. 4 months postpartum. She thought about the timing. Dai's son at that stage. The domestic life fully constructed. The first tremors of unsustainability beginning. A man who thought 3 moves ahead, beginning to engineer his exit before the floor gave way. She had loved that quality in him. His long view. His strategic mind. She had not understood that his long view had always, from the beginning, been trained on himself. Jaywan sat down, poured coffee from a carafe. She picked it up without looking away from the documents and drank it and kept working. He took a call in Korean at one point. She registered the shift in his voice peripherally. The harder register, different tempo, a different mode of the same person. She filed it. 2 hours in, she closed the folder. He forged divorce papers while I was protecting this country, she said. One time, quietly, precisely, because some facts needed to exist in the open air before you could work with them effectively. Jaywan said nothing. He witnessed it. That was enough. She looked at him directly. What else are you not telling me? He held her gaze with no hesitation. The photographs of Dai's son with the federal agent were taken on my direct orders. I have been running surveillance on him for 14 months. I know more about his arrangement with the investigator than I told you last night. She set the pen down. How much more? He offered to deliver financial documentation, implicating 3 senior members of my organization, he said. Full immunity for himself and Gina in exchange. The deal is approximately 60% finalized. When it closes, your accounts will surface in federal discovery, whether they've been legally separated by then or not. She processed that. which makes your timeline tighter than you disclosed last night. Yes. Why didn't you tell me all of this at dinner? Because 12 hours earlier you had walked off a gangway and discovered your husband had a child with another woman after forging your name off a marriage certificate, he said. I gave you the foundational facts and I gave you the night. Today you are operational. Today I give you everything. He paused. I am giving you everything now. She looked at him steadily for a long moment. Then she picked up the pen. Then start talking. He talked. She wrote. They worked for another full hour, thorough, precise, exhaustive. When it was done, she had a complete legal strategy with a tight timeline and a significantly more complicated picture of Shin Jaywan than the night before. More complicated and more honest. She had learned over 14 years to prefer honest and complicated over simple and incomplete. As she gathered the folder, Gina has no information and no protection. No, he said. When this is legally settled, someone should tell her the truth, Imani said. I know it's not your priority. I'm stating it because it's what's right. He held her gaze. I'll note it. In the elevator going down, she stood with the folder against her chest and watched Port Caro through the glass wall, the harbor at the far edge, the water gray, and still in the December light. Less than 24 hours since the gangway. She had documents. She had a lawyer. She had the shape of the situation in her hands. She thought about her mother, the specific architecture of her composure, the deliberate stillness that held even at the very end. When holding it was costing more than the body had left to spend. Imani had absorbed it the same way she absorbed the elevated A, at 7 years old, without trying, without knowing that was what she was doing. Her mother had given her that. The understanding that feeling something fully and being destroyed by it were not the same thing. That the space between them was where a person's actual life was lived. The lobby. She walked out into the cold. She had work to do. Port Caro's Korean night market ran along the waterfront Wednesday through Saturday. String lights above old warehouse corridors converted into something that couldn't be categorized as belonging to one culture. Teokbokki and Kelewele on adjacent stalls, a Gayagiyam busker at the entrance whose playing pulled a small permanent crowd. By 7 p.m. on a Thursday, the December cold had been completely overruled by warmth and noise and the smell of a dozen different things cooking simultaneously. Jaywan was at the entrance without the corporate coat. Dark jeans, black knit, the tattoos on his hands fully visible, the one on his neck above the collar. He looked like a different mode of the same person, more present in his own body, less of the polished businessman and more of whatever he actually was when nobody was requiring the performance. He looked at her when she arrived, and something moved quickly in his face, registered, and was filed. They went in together. It was the first time in 7 years Imani Asante Cole had walked anywhere with no mission parameter attached to the movement. No route to clear, no perimeter assessment, no exit mapping that wasn't pure reflex. Just forward, into color and warmth and noise. Past a stall selling hottok, past a woman doing beadwork in indigo and gold with the focused unhurriedness of someone who did this every Thursday night and did not rush for anyone. Past teenagers in maximum disagreement about a plate of rice cakes. The noise was warm and non-threatening, and her nervous system kept generating threat assessments out of sheer trained habit. Kept returning empty results and didn't know what to do with the absence of threat. Jaywan bought teokbokki from a stall whose owner immediately addressed him in rapid Korean that had the unmistakable cadence of affectionate scolding. Jaywan responded with what she assessed as well-practiced gracious contrition. The man pressed extra rice cakes onto both their portions, with the deep satisfaction of someone who had contributed something meaningful to the universe. What did he say? She said. That I look worse every time he sees me and I work too much, Jaywan said. He's been saying it for 4 years. It makes him feel useful. I don't argue. She took a rice cake, ate it, the right heat, the right sweet spice balance, the right pull of texture. She could not remember the last time she had eaten something for the pure sensory experience of it. Pleasure eating had been a professional issue for 7 years. Fuel management, caloric intake, not enjoyment. She ate the rice cake and filed a small, ordinary thought. I want to do this more. She had not had a small, ordinary thought in a long time. Tell me something real, she said. Not conference room real. Actually real. He walked for a beat before answering. I grew up between Incheon and Maryland. My father was in shipping. I moved between ports until I stopped moving. I learned 5 languages before I learned how to be comfortable in any single country. I have been running operations since I was 22. Before that, I was doing things ordered by men I was not yet positioned to disagree with. When did you reach that position? 26, he said. It cost something I don't minimize. But you took it. Yes. She understood that kind of transition. She had made her own version of it inside a completely different institution. The point at which you stopped being the person who executed and became the person who decided, and discovered that the weight of deciding was heavier in every direction than executing had ever been. I enlisted at 19, she said. My mother had stage 3 ovarian cancer. The treatment cost was beyond what the family had. I did the math and enlisted inside a week of the diagnosis. Did she survive? He said, carefully. She died in year 3, Imani said. I was in Djibouti, emergency leave, 48 hours. I made it back in time to be there at the end. Stated without performance, just fact, processed and filed and lived alongside for 11 years. Destiny was 20. She was alone with it for a week before I got there. And you went back to the base, he said. 4 years remaining on the contract, she said. And going back was genuinely easier than staying. On a base, you always know what is required of you. The role is clear. Out here, she looked at the market around them, the lights and the vendors and the ordinary noise of people who were not managing a crisis. Out here, the requirements take longer to read. That clarity comes back, he said, later than you expect, but it does come. They passed a candle stall, a dried fish vendor, a small stage where a band was setting up with anticipatory energy. She angled naturally toward the quieter end near the harbor without thinking about it, and he followed her lead without comment. She noticed that. The following, without comment. She had been around enough men in significant positions of authority to understand how genuinely rare that was. The instinct to follow someone else's navigation without making it an issue. Near the harbor end where the lights were fewer and the air colder and the market noise was a warm hum rather than a wall of sound, a Ghanaian vendor had set up with a coal pot and a basket of corn. Older, woman, round face, yellow head wrap, the kind of presence that naturally reorganized the air around it into something warmer. She looked up at Imani, and her entire face opened instantly, wide, immediate, completely unperformed. Ah, sister, you look like home. Come, 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 Imani laughed. It happened entirely without permission. Sudden and completely unguarded and real. The kind of laugh that surprises you with its own existence, that you didn't know was still in you, waiting for this exact woman at this exact stall with this exact energy to call it out. The vendor laughed with her. And Jaywan, standing right beside her, had something happen in his expression that he did not recover from fast enough. Something quiet and warm, not quite a smile, but the country immediately next to one. Something that looked like it had not been planned and had arrived before he could decide whether to allow it. She saw it. She filed it. She bought 2 corn cobs, turned and handed one to Jaywan. He took it with both hands extended, automatic, Korean courtesy living so deep in his body it operated without thought. She had learned to pay attention to the things that lived below a person's thought. They were consistently more honest than the things they curated for you. They ate and walked. She told him about destiny, the food blog that became a real career, the appliance partnerships, the 6-minute voice memos sent across 7 years that she listened to in satellite connection windows, watching her sister build a whole different person out of herself, in increments too small to see, except from a distance and a delay. He listened without waiting for his turn. Actually receiving what she said. Actually there. She left me a 6-minute voicemail when I landed, Imani said. Half fury, half grief. Everything in 2 keys at once. That's always been destiny in a crisis. You haven't called her back yet, he said. Tomorrow, she said, when I can tell her how it resolves, not just what happened. He was quiet for one moment. She'd probably rather just hear your voice tonight, he said. She looked at him sideways, held that. Yes, she said. You're right. I'll call her tonight. A beat. You know that because you researched her. Yes, he said. How thoroughly did you research me? Thoroughly, he said. How long? 3 months, he said. She filed that, kept walking. They had reached the harbor end fully. Sparse lights, cold air, the market behind them reduced to its warmest and most distant register. He stopped. She turned. Something I need to tell you, he said. She waited. The second faction. I spoke with their representative this morning. His eyes stayed completely steady on hers. They have the address of your room near the base. The cold air went very still. Daysun gave it to them, Jaywan said, as a demonstration of usefulness, showing them he can deliver the person most legally exposed on the accounts before she has time to become a complication. She absorbed that. Let it complete its full shape in her mind. He's using me as currency, she said, buying goodwill with the faction that wants me removed, while simultaneously cooperating with federal investigators against your organization. He is playing every board he can find at the same time. Yes, Jaywan said. Then he doesn't understand what board he is actually standing on, she said. She looked at Jaywan directly. I need to move tonight. Alternative housing is already arranged, he said. Building with security I can personally account for. Give me the protocols and the full personnel roster, she said. I assess it myself before I commit to it. Something moved in his expression. Not surprise. Something closer to recognition, like a response he had been hoping for and had not been certain he would get. Sent within the hour. Good. She held his gaze. I need you to understand something clearly. If anyone approaches whatever room I am in under the assumption that they are managing a disoriented woman who is still processing an emotional shock, they will need to have completely revised that assumption before they get anywhere near the door. She paused. I have 14 years of combat training, a service weapon I am licensed to carry and will use without hesitation, and I have not had patience for people who mistake my composure for passivity for a very long time. Jaywan looked at her for a moment. The fatigue behind his composure shifted into something she had not seen in his face before, something that looked like it had arrived without being invited and had not yet been assigned a name. I know, he said, quiet, completely steady. That is precisely why I found you first. The string lights moved above them in the harbor wind. The market hummed behind them with its warm, indifferent life. They stood in the cold, in the specific way of two people who had both said the true thing when they had the chance, and both understood what that meant. She turned. They walked back through the market together. The silence between them had a quality she had not encountered in a long time. The silence of two people who had nothing left to perform for each other. Subscribe right now if you haven't, because the next 5 minutes of this story are the minutes this whole episode has been building toward. Is Jaywan protecting her? Or is he the most dangerous man in this story? Drop your answer in the comments. We are about to find out together. The new room was on the 8th floor of a building 4 blocks from the base. Double lock. She checked the window immediately for sightlines and entry angles. Set her service weapon on the desk table within arm's reach the way she had set it within arm's reach every single night for 7 years. Spread the documents. Opened the notebook to the legal strategy grid and worked through it for 90 tight minutes, refining, sequencing, ordering every action in exact priority. Then she called Destiny. Second ring. Tell me everything, Destiny said, before Imani had finished saying her own name. Imani told her. Not all of it. Not Jaywan, not the faction threat, not the $4 million, but Dai's son, the doc, the woman in the pale blue coat, the baby in the cream blanket, the forged papers. She told it in sequence, controlled. The emotion present but not editorialized into the facts, because emotion dissolved into facts made them less useful. When she finished, Destiny was quiet for 4 precise seconds. Then, I need you to know, I found out 6 weeks ago, from a mutual contact, and I did not know how to tell you over a satellite call before you got home. I have been sitting on this information for 6 weeks, and it has been the worst 6 weeks of my entire life, and I am so sorry you walked off that ship and saw it that way. I know, Imani said. You did what you could. I am furious, Destiny said. I am furious at a volume that my platform is probably not the right place for. I am considering it anyway. Stay out of it, Imani said. I am handling it. How are you so calm right now? I'm not calm, Imani said. I'm organized. Those are not the same thing. Destiny went quiet. Then softly, Are you okay? Imani sat with the honest version of that question. I will be, she said. That's the most accurate thing I can tell you. Okay, Destiny said. Okay, I trust that. I know you do, Imani said. That's always been the deal. They talked for 30 more minutes. When they hung up, something in Imani's chest had loosened in the specific way it only loosened when Destiny was on the other end. The release of being known by someone who had known you since before you built everything you had become. That kind of anchor was irreplaceable. Nothing else reached the same thing. She went back to the documents. Her phone buzzed at 12:47 a.m. voicemail notification. Unknown number. Received while she had been on with Destiny. She played it. A woman's voice. Korean accented. Measured. Precise. Each word chosen like it was structural. Lieutenant Commander Asante Cole. You have been speaking with Shin Jaywan. He has provided you with the documents and told you he wants to help you. What he has not told you is that the photographs of Kwandae's son with the federal investigator were taken on his direct orders. He has known about that federal contact for longer than he admitted to you, and he was not in that parking lot this morning because he happened to see you come off your ship. Ask him where he was the night before your vessel docked in Port Cairo. Ask him that specifically, and then decide what you trust. Deadline. Imani put the phone down on the table. She did not move for a moment. Then she went back to the folder. She went through all 8 photographs again. This time, she did not look at the subjects. She looked at the methodology, the angle of every shot, the position and access the photographer required to produce each specific frame. She had intelligence analysis training. She knew how to read a photograph for what it cost to take it. Restaurant shot, elevated angle from above and to the left. Requires upper floor access in the specific building across the street. She knew that building. She had walked past it last night. Pier shot, water level, focal rocking of a camera on a boat. Every single one of the 8 photographs required planned, positioned, resourced surveillance, not reaction. Operation. Someone had been watching Dae-sun long enough to know where he would be. She found the 9th photograph in the inner pocket of the folder, the pocket she had registered on first review as containing duplicates and had not examined fully. One photograph, no label, no printed timestamp, her on the dock, dress whites, the naval terminal behind her. She was standing completely still in the center of the moving crowd, in the 4 seconds after she had stopped walking. She recognized the exact moment. She remembered the weight of it from the inside. Upper right corner, blue ink, handwritten timestamp. 6:14 a.m. She placed the full sequence in her memory precisely. The harbor approach, the docking announcement, the gangway deployment, the moment she descended. Her ship had not completed docking until 6:45 a.m. She had been photographed at the naval terminal at 6:14 a.m. 31 minutes before the ship was accessible, before the gangway was down, before she had placed a foot on Port Cairo ground. Shin Jaywan, or someone acting under his orders, had been positioned at the naval terminal before she arrived, with access to a classified military docking schedule, which meant the parking lot had not been improvised. The calibrated distance, and the tea, and the voice, and the precise reading of what she needed in that moment. None of it had been a reaction. All of it had been prepared. She picked up her phone, texted the sole number, "Who are you?" 3 minutes. Then, "Someone who used to work for him. Be careful, he is not what he told you. He is also not what you are afraid he is. The truth is more layered than either of those things." She read it 3 times. Set the phone down. She looked at the photograph of herself on the dock. Her own face, composed, scanning, completely controlled in the worst 4 seconds of the last decade. He had been watching her do that, had been there, positioned and ready, watching her hold herself together on a pier in dress whites while her life dissolved quietly behind her eyes. She thought about what she actually had. The documents were genuine. Verification was in progress through her lawyer, but she was as certain of their authenticity as professional assessment could make her. Jaywan had today volunteered information that did not flatter him, had answered every direct question directly, had told her she was an operational asset, had told her the less comfortable truth rather than let her hold the more comfortable version, had said "you're not someone I handle," and had meant it as far as she could read. She could read these things. She had been reading them for 14 years, in environments where reading them incorrectly was fatal, and he had been at the terminal at 6:14 a.m. with classified schedule access and a positioned photographer. Both things were true. Simultaneously. They did not cancel each other, they complicated each other. Truth was not a single layer. She had learned that in 14 years of operating in places where the truth was always contextual, always held by someone with a specific reason for the way they held it. The question was not, is he honest? The question was, is he honest enough, in the specific ways that matter here, to move forward with? She was going to ask him where he was the night before her ship docked. Tomorrow morning, face to face. Before the lawyers, and before the legal strategy, and before any of the next steps moved. She was going to ask it directly, and read his response with everything she had, the full attention look, the pattern recognition, the ability to distinguish a man delivering the complicated truth from a man performing the shape of it. And she was going to make a call. She had made harder calls on less intelligence, in worse conditions. She picked up the notebook. Opened to a clean page, wrote at the top, what I know, what I don't know, what I am going to find out, and exactly how. She wrote for 25 minutes without stopping, fast and precise and exhaustive. The gaps in the picture were as informative as the filled sections. She could see exactly where the uncertainty lived. She could see exactly how to close it. She closed the notebook, holstered her weapon, turned off the lamp. She lay in the dark with her eyes open, and she ran tomorrow through her mind the way she had run every operation the night before it, question by question, response by response, the response to the response all the way down the chain until every branch was mapped. 10,000 times she had done this. She had become very good at it. Whatever Shin Jaywan turned out to be at the end of this, the man who was genuinely trying to protect her, the man who had planned her from the very beginning, or the thing the woman on the voicemail said was more layered than either. He was about to find out what Imani Asante Cole looked like when she stopped being patient and started being precise. Port Caro had no idea what had docked in its harbor. Kwan Dai-sun had no idea what was coming for the life he had so carefully constructed over her absence. The forged papers, the new wife, the baby in the cream blanket, all of it built on the assumption that she would stay gone, or stay quiet, or stay broken. He did not know her at all. He had never known her. 7 years of letters, and he had never once understood what he was married to. And Shin Jaywan, who had watched her for 3 months from a calculated distance, who had handed her tea in a parking lot with the composure of a man who never lost it, who had looked at her laughing at a corn stall in a night market and had not recovered fast enough. Jaywan was about to learn the one thing that every person who had ever underestimated Imani Asante Cole had eventually been forced to learn. You could not lie to a woman like this and expect her to stay lied to. You could not build a 7-year deception on her name and her signature and her trust and think it would hold the moment she stepped off the gangway. And you could not watch someone from a careful distance for 3 months and assume that when she finally turned around and looked back, she would be seeing from the same angle as everyone else. She closed her eyes. She was ready. She had always been ready. That was the thing about Imani Asante Cole that Port Caro was about to fully understand. Part 2 is coming, and you need to be subscribed before it drops. Because the question Imani asks Jaywan when she walks back into that building tomorrow morning is the question this entire story has been building toward from the first second she stepped off that ship. Comment right now. Is Jaywan genuinely protecting her? Or has he been positioning her from the parking lot? And the woman on that voicemail? Whose side is she on? Fight it out in the comments. I need to see it. Like this video if Imani is already the most compelling woman you have seen on this channel this year. Share it with someone who needs a story that earns every single minute of their time. Part 1 ends here. Part 2 begins where she picks up the phone.